So, Elon Musk just became the richest man in history, and he's valued over $1 trillion, and his company, the SpaceX, just over $2.5 trillion. So, surely this all is deserved. Surely SpaceX is worth as much as they say, and there's absolutely nothing that can go wrong. Well, things are a bit complicated, and let me tell you why. So, buckle up, story time. See, first, let's break down the SpaceX. Let's see who they are and what they do. So, in an essence, the company itself can be split into three different business models. Now, number one, as they say, is the space exploration. Now, basically what this means is that they build spaceships or rockets that will then go on to carry satellites into the orbit and support agencies such as NASA or somebody else, and even take people on private space tours. Now, the second model is the one that we all associate SpaceX with the most, at least, and that is telecommunication. Basically, they have the Starlink, which is the constellation of thousands of satellites in a low Earth orbit, and they provide an internet service for the planet. Now, the last one is probably the most interesting one because it's the most recent acquisition, is because they added the AI department to their company. So now they're developing their AI models such as Grok, which is supported by huge data centers. So they're going to be storing data. That will be one business model. And in the future, they're hoping to take these data centers in space and have a massive constellation of space data centers, maybe even on the moon. Now, this is where we come to the actual problem with SpaceX, and that is the fact that a lot of what they do is happening right now, and there's a lot of value that they provide to the society and the world and how they make their money, but they're also promising even more, and a lot of this value for Elon Musk and its companies comes from the promise of a future technology rather than what's happening right now. See, something interesting happened during the trading, as some of the economists were pointing out, and that is that a lot of the stocks were bought by the retail traders, which means basically people like you and me, or somebody who's trying to buy a limited number of stocks just because they heard that this is something that will become good. Now, the difference between retail buyers and the big hedge funds who are seasonal investors is that the retail buyers don't really do a lot of research. They're just a lot more susceptible to the hype and to marketing, rather than doing a deep analysis, comparing what the company has at the moment, what are their revenues, which is the more important part, what are their losses, and what is the prospect of all those things that they're promising that they will happen for a certain amount of time. See, here's the issue. If you are somebody who will buy a stock just because somebody told you that they will be growing fast in the future because of certain something, then that also means that you're probably going to be the first one to blink and chicken out. So whenever you hear that they start missing their promised earnings for their quarters, you're probably going to be the first one who's going to start selling that, which means that then the company can start losing their value even faster than they gain it. Now, another issue with this is that there is a very significant choke point. Even though they have different things in their portfolio, they all depend on one specific thing happening in order for all that to facilitate. See, the core issue is the reliability of the Starship, as they promise to consistently take off and land and be reused for new missions. Therefore, it will be significantly lowering the price of every launch. Now, this will be necessary for all the NASA missions. It will also be necessary for all the future flights and for all those massive data centers, which will require massive rockets to take them to the sky, which will not happen if they don't figure out how to do that. Now, as of now, they did have a lot of success with it, but they're really nowhere near to having this being as reliable as they hope it to be and as the investors are hoping that they will be. Now, but there is a different side of the coin, like with everything. You can argue that because of all of this maybe slightly or even significantly exaggerated value, the company will gain a lot of funds that it will then use to improve its current technologies and also discover some new ones that will then be used to support agencies like NASA. They will do missions for the, let's say, greater good of humanity, but then they will also focus on their private part, which is making money out of the whole thing. Now, the other thing is, or the other side of that coin is that we really don't have any official timeline on when can we expect those things to happen. For example, Elon Musk said in a tweet that I think he later deleted that he is hoping or thinking that the SpaceX will have a revenue of $1 trillion by the year of 2030, and that he will be really surprised if that number is not surpassed by the year of 2031. Now, the reality is more complicated than that, because even though they have revenue, they also have a lot of losses because of all the investments that they're doing and all the problems that they're facing along the way. So the main issue will be, will those investors who have initially invested stick around for long enough for the even bigger investment to come in and support the continuous need of the SpaceX to develop and pour money into its research and its programs? Now, if you look everything on a superficial level, you can ask one simple question. If SpaceX is such an incredible company, and if the things that they're doing are so incredible and never seen before, then what can we say for NASA? Is there something significant that SpaceX done from its inception that NASA hasn't done in the previous years? Now, and this can be said not just for NASA, but for a lot of other space agencies around the world. We've been sending people in space and satellites for decades and decades before the SpaceX was even conceived. And sure, they do have the constellation of the low orbit satellites, but that's nothing crazy. That's not some new technology that we've never even knew that it's possible before they came around. They just decided to do it because they're a private company and they have interest of putting, for example, internet up there and then providing that service to around the globe. Now, again, if you look this strictly from a business point, you should also consider the competition. Because although SpaceX is creating a lot of ruffle in the industry, there are other companies that are popping up in the United States and around the world, and there are also other governments that are considering joining into this race of sending people on the moon, establishing lunar bases over there, creating data centers in space and doing space mining and so on and so on. Basically, every single thing that the SpaceX said or that they will be doing or they're doing right now, there is also somebody else who is investing in this field. Now, interestingly, this brings a very nice comparison with Tesla, which is another Musk company, and that is that although they were innovators and they did quite a few things in that field, everybody else soon caught up, and quite a few companies are even surpassing Tesla as a car company. But then the interesting part is that they kind of rebranded after that into an AI company that it just happens to be making cars on the side. Now, none of this is a slander on SpaceX or Elon Musk as a businessman or any of the companies that he has, but it is a cautionary tale that your actual performance has to be following your value, or otherwise in a long run things can start imploding. Now, another thing that stands out in the whole this evaluation, it is the price to earning, or PE ratio. Basically, what that means is the willingness of investors to pay certain amount of money per share, and then the value of that share per the revenue of the company at the moment. Probably didn't get that 100% right because I'm not an economist, so I'm sure that somebody will correct me, but basically that's what that means. Now, for SpaceX, that's 100 times, while for other companies such as Nvidia or Apple, that's significantly less. It's more like a 30, 31, or maybe up to 50 times more than per one share, which means that a lot of this is built on trust of the future results and not what's happening right now. Now, I guess the time will tell. I do personally think that SpaceX is overvalued for what they're offering at the moment. There's a huge potential for the company if they continue in this direction, and they can contribute to space agencies such as NASA for a lot of their projects. But all of that is hanging up in the air because After all, we're humans, and this world is a very volatile place, and that is something that we all learned in the last 6 years or so. So who's to say what's going to happen in the next decade or 20 years? And can you seriously guarantee that 50 years from now, if we establish colonies on the moon and Mars, that the SpaceX will be the main driving force behind that, and not some other companies from the United States or from the world or some government agencies? It's simply no way of telling that. And just what's going to happen when other companies start to catch up to SpaceX? How's their value going to play out? Are they going to take away something from the SpaceX, or all the combined prices will just be blown up through the ceiling until the whole thing starts to crash down when the market inevitably starts to even out? In any case, I just think this is something interesting to think about, especially considering everything that is happening right now and that will be happening in the world of science and space explorations. But let me know, what do you think about this? Would you buy a stake in a company such as the SpaceX? Have you ever already bought it? And what do you think? What is the future perspective of space exploration in general and this company as well? Anyways, if you want to hear more from me, consider liking, sharing, and following, because every now and then I talk about something interesting.